consumption.
Flotation mechanism. The micromechanism of flotation is simply allowing bubbles to adsorb onto the surface of the desired particles. However, in reality, it is the micromechanism that predominates such process. The mechanism of flotation is dependent upon three major flotation agents: the modifying agents, collectors, and the frothers. As the name implies, the modifying agents modify or alter the properties of both the solution and the particulates present. Modifying agents can render a solution acidic or alkaline depending on what is desired or favorable. It is very important in altering the surface characteristic of the desired so that the collectors may be selective to it alone. Selectivity is important to maximize recovery and minimize the presence of the undesired. Next, the collectors coat the modified surface and render the particles nonpolar. The nonpolarity is due to the dual polarity of the collector molecules. The polar end orients into the interior, while the nonpolar ends extend outward. Rendering the molecules mycel-like will allow for easier separation and allow the bubbles to stick. It is one of the important roles of the collectors to favor the adhesion of the air bubbles, which are essential for the floating action needed for separation. Lastly, surface active chemicals called frothers coat the bubble surface and stabilizes it by decreasing the surface tension of water. The surface active characteristic disrupts the surface water molecule attraction, thus weakening the surface. Weakening the surface tension will prevent the water from exerting too much force and allow the bubbles to retain its integrity. When the process is successful, the particulates, together with the bubbles, may float and may be recovered on top.
Our next topic is the fundamentals of flotation. These involves the following: thermodynamics of wetting, physical-chemical phenomena, particle bubble attachment, process variables, and effect of particle. First is the thermodynamics of wetting. The fundamental objective of flotation is to contact solid particles suspended in water with air bubbles and cause a stable bubble-particle attachment. Figure 19-65 shows us the representation of air-water bubble-particle system. Letters A and B shows us the representation before and after the attachment, while letter C gives us the equilibrium force balance where contact angle can be measured. Next is the physical-chemical phenomena, which is a very important phenomena that occur due to the addition of reagents. These include solubility and dissociation of reagents in water, change of pH of the suspension, change of air-water surface tension, and many others. These also affects the contact angle and flotation nature of solid particles and their attachment to air bubbles. Particle bubble attachment is simply described as a combination of three stochastic events which are associated with the probability of particle bubble collision, probability of attachment, and probability of retention of attachment. Process variables include chemical variables, flotation machine variables, operating variables, and particle characteristics such as size, shape, and chemical and mineralogical composition. Last is the effect of particle size. This is the most significant variable of flotation separation. Larger particles, being heavy, cannot be easily levitated and recovered, even though proper thermodynamic conditions might exist.
In flotation process,
An equipment is needed in which the material is actually separated or floated from residual tailings. This equipment is called flotation unit or flotation cell. There are two types of flotation cells. One is the mechanical cells and the other is the pneumatic cells. Pneumatic cells have three examples. One is the Calo cell, Calo-Macintosh cell, and the airlift cell. In mechanical cells, a mechanical agitator draws in air and beats it into the pulp. Agitation is more violent. Then the tailings are more or less free from the desired material in the concentration. Pneumatic cells, on the other hand, depends upon compressed air for mild agitation. It produces a clean froth but needs 50% more contact time, and the pulp must be fully conditioned before flotation. First example of pneumatic cell is the Calo cell. Horizontal blankets are used where the compressed air is passed through. It also needs special care when cleaning the blankets to prevent tearing of cloth. It is used for solids that are easily floated without great agitation. Next is the Calo-Macintosh cell. In this kind of pneumatic cell, the air passed through by means of a perforated rotor made from steel tube and covered with either perforated rubber or cloth. The cloth does not bend easily due to the rotation of the tube. The third one is the airlift cell. This cell does not employ a blanket like the Calo cell. It is free from moving parts. The compressed air is passed through a tube connected outside of the cell and opens about 6 inches from the bottom of the cell. There are other types of equipment used in flotation process. One is the electrolytic flotation unit. This involves the generation of hydrogen and oxygen bubbles in a dilute aqueous solution by passing direct current between two electrodes. This is the schematic diagram of an electrolytic flotation plant. The raw water is being fed. Particles are floated by the use of the electric currents from the electrodes. Then the sludge removal belt removes the particles through the sludge trough. The clarified water effluent directly exits. Next is the dissolved air flotation units. These units use air to saturate the process stream, thereby generating air bubbles by releasing the pressure. Direct nucleation and growth of air bubbles to the particles are achieved by particle bubble contact, and very little mechanical agitation is employed. This is the schematic diagram of a dissolved air flotation plant. The dissolved air generates air bubbles which contact the particles, causing the particles to float. The float sludge then exits. On the other hand, the clarified effluent exits with the use of the pump. Dispersed air flotation units involves the use of pneumatic or mechanical means of generating air bubbles. In both cases, relatively large air bubbles are generated. Filters are added to the flotation devices in order to control the size and stability of air bubbles. Mechanical cells, on the other hand, are commonly known as flotation cells. These are characterized by a cubic or cylindrical shape equipped with an impeller surrounded by baffles with provisions for introduction to the feed slurry and removal of froth overflow and tailings underflow. The picture is a schematic diagram of a mechanical cell. The impelling action of the impeller makes the particles to float. The froth is removed by the scraper, while the tailings exit to the next cell. Last is the flotation columns. These pneumatic devices use gas sparging system to generate air bubbles, and there is no mechanical agitation being employed. Columns are built of long tubes of either circular or square cross-sections that are commonly fitted an internal baffling. They are usually 10 or even 15 meter high with a cross-sectional area of 5 to 10 meters squared. Shown here the schematic diagram of flotation column.